Hi, my name's Terry, and this is for SLP 212 for the speech therapy language demo video for students with TBI. My age group is the middle school. I took an activity and tweaked it to make it age appropriate, which I'll talk about later. Quickly, I want to say the goal of the activity that I'm doing is going to be determining whether statements are supported by acceptable reasons, facts, or unacceptable reasons, opinions. I had to correlate the two since the activity had acceptable and unacceptable for my students with TBI to be able to understand that and learn the skill. I'm using facts and opinions to correlate with those terms during the game. Quickly, I want to say that something you can do in the general education classroom to help accommodate students with TBI, you can use mnemonics, for instance, for a test. First of all, you want to reduce the number of questions that you have. You can do fill in the blank questions, and you can also provide a word list. And these are some of the modifications you can do to help the student with TBI in the general ed classroom. With the mnemonic, you can use score, the word scorer, S-C-O-R-E-R, schedule your time for S, C, look for clue words, O, omit difficult questions, and R, read carefully, E, estimate your answers, and R, review your work. And there are more details in their handout from this past week. At any rate, I would begin this lesson by connecting to the prior student's knowledge about opinions and facts and correlate those to the terms I mentioned previously. And I'd hook them into the lesson with something interesting by actually using opinions and facts like, oh, your hair looks great today, so-and-so. I might say to another student, did you know my brother went to the hospital today because he broke his leg while skateboarding. Anyways, that might segue into right away into what facts and opinions are. And then I will provide them with information that they need. Usually it has to be visual and verbal, so we'll go over it. We'll go over some examples of what those are and have them apply the new concept as they learn it. And I have the visual, which is here. I would have done this on a whiteboard maybe, but this is nice because the students can take it home with them. It's color-coded, so we have facts in one color and opinions, and then I have a green bullet to point to where they began reading and a red dot for when they end, and that would just make it easier for them. And I broke it down so it's very simple, and then I gave them a fun thing to help them when they have trouble remembering. It's this is what I made up. For a fact, it's something true. Not everything is blue. Opinion, it may be what you think or feel, not something real, like, hey, that's a great meal. So they'll refer to this throughout the lesson or activity, and that can act as a visual cue when they're having problems. I can refer them to that. Let's see. So we're going to go over some of those examples, and then I would probably give them the instructions. Well, I'm gonna let them know before we even go into depth with our opinions and facts and what they are, that the reason that we're talking about is that we're going to be doing an activity, so you be the judge, or yeah, you be the judge, which is here. As I mentioned before, that's from our book, and it's going to be, it's also color-coded to match the visual which I just talked about, so it's very logical. And I had to write down opinion and fact above them because this is where I had to correlate this activity with those since it wasn't included. So what they do is each time I give them a random statement from my sheet, which I modified to make age appropriate for junior high kids. They're going to place a coin or whatever I give them, in this case, this little smiley face here, and they're going to indicate their understanding by placing it on one of these circles if it's acceptable or unacceptable. That is for a student if that's the level they're at. If they need to be more challenged to make it more difficult, in this game they're given a bonus coin if they can tell me if the statement is acceptable or unacceptable and the reason why. How can they make an unacceptable one acceptable as well? Then I think it's about 5 to 10. If they have 5 to 10 filled up, then they're the ones who win, of course. To make the activity easier, I mentioned that I could use the visual cue, point to their sheet. I can also repeat the statement. I can pause, which I'll be doing throughout the instructions in the lesson. In between, I'll be pausing for at least 15 seconds for them to process. So I can repeat the statement to make it easier. I can break it down further. I can ask them, for instance, why don't you want to ride the bus, to get them to think about that part of the statement. Let me give you an example. For instance, there's an acceptable and unacceptable statement. You don't want to ride the bus because we have to get up early in the morning to catch it. Since these are going to be random, they're not going to be right next to each other, so it'll make it harder. You don't want to ride the bus because you don't like the other kids who ride it. So I can say, why don't you want to ride the bus? And pause, and then ask them, is it something that you just don't want to do? Or is it something that you can prove that's happening? Then I can point to the fact or opinions. Or I can use the little saying that I mentioned earlier. If it's not true, it's something true. Not everything is blue, and then the other one that I mentioned. I can also rephrase it or simplify the statement that I make so that they understand. Basically, that is it for the lesson. By the time we're finished, we'll probably be doing the closing, which will involve a question at the end of the lesson. What were the concepts that we learned today? What did we do? Fact or opinion, acceptable versus unacceptable reasons, and how we did that. And then for compliments, I'll make sure that the student knows specifically what it is. I really like the way you provided, or you indicated that it was a fact, or you identified that it was an opinion or reasonable, acceptable or unacceptable. I can use those interchangeably. Reason, the fiction, oh goodness, opinion and fact. Let's see, is there anything else that I may be missing? I think that's it. All right.